Hello, everybody. This is Susan Heaton-Wright from the SuperStar Communicator podcast and live stream. It's a little bit lonely today because my co-host, Nick Simon, as you know, he is still training to be a composer at university, has a meeting with his tutor, which he could not miss. But he says sorry that he's not here, but he will be commenting later on this amazing interview. And I have to say that it is amazing and it has created so much curiosity, partly because of the name Scrum, but also because one of the things that we talk about to help emerging leaders is how to communicate, how to build trust, how to create a team. And I am very, very lucky to be interviewing Angela Johnson, who is a certified Scrum trainer and the author of the Scrum Master Files, Secrets Every Coach Should Know. As a professional people geek, I'm sure you're not. Angela helps others successfully implement Scrum and Agile. Well, I'll be asking you these questions to achieve their goals and objectives. So welcome, Angela.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
The pleasure is all mine. Do you know, we are so blessed here at SuperStar Communicator HQ of the quality of the guests, and you're no exception.
Oh, thank you.
So first of all, what's a scrum?
I know that the rugby metaphor, that scrummage, that huddle. And Susan and I were talking about a proper rugby scrummage where there's grabbing of body parts and so on and so forth. And there's none of that here.
Oh, you're disappointing me.
I was supposed to say bum. I know there's none of those grabbing of those parts here. And if it's disappointing, I apologize. The article that the creators of Scrum drew inspiration from is a Harvard Business Review article, and it's called The New Product Development Game. And what the professors who wrote that article observed is companies who, like you say in your introduction, really trust their employees. They have teams of people they trust. They saw these people working together in these huddles. These people would get together in these huddles to solve problems, to get something out the door to a customer very quickly. And they called it a rugby-like huddle. And so hence Scrum. The creators of Scrum loved that rugby-like metaphor, people working together on a common goal. And it's just short for scrummage. It's not an acronym or anything like that. It's drawn directly, from that formation.
And you are a trainer.
Yes.
In this particular concept. So can you tell me more about this?
Absolutely. The organization that licenses me is called Scrum Alliance. They are a global non-profit organization to try to change the world of work, to try to bring about a different way of working and make organizations more agile, right? Can these organizations adapt? Can they pivot? Can they turn on a dime for a dime? And I am what they call a certified Scrum trainer, which is just a fancy way of saying the Scrum Alliance licenses me to bring education services to the market and certify people as Scrum Masters, product owners, and so on.
And what sort of clients do you work with?
Certainly, the information technology space loves Scrum. It became popular initially in the IT community, but we are seeing all kinds of organizations use it. I have a team of graduates who uses it to, we say flip. Over here, we say flip houses, so they take, houses that need some cosmetic repair and then resell them, but they work together in this cross-functional rugby-like approach to do that very quickly. So we have people who do that. We have clients who make robotic devices. We have clients who make materials that go in devices like this, like my headset here. So there's people using Scrum as a way to do work in all kinds of disciplines, not just information technology, although that is what it's popularly associated with.
So what's the difference between what you teach and standard leadership training?
Yeah, there's not a lot of differences there other than the fact that Scrum is a framework, so it gives you what I would call guidelines.
Okay.
It does not speak to leaders per se in an organization other than here's what you need to enable. So when I look at leadership training, whether it be from Leadership 360 or stuff that even Simon Sinek teaches or anything that's popularly available, it always resonates because it always comes down to creating an environment where
Yeah.
people feel trusted, creating an environment where people are motivated and work together to solve problems. Because honestly, in this day and age, if we don't get value out the door to our customers, they like to vote with their feet. I like to say they vote with their feet and their wallet.
It's so interesting that one of the features of the Scrum is creating a sort of safe environment.
Mm-hmm.
Presumably that means everything from any opinion, any idea matters, through to, okay, we've made a mistake. How are we going to learn from this? How are we going to move forward?
Absolutely. And when you do that, right, everybody has opinions. We all do. There are things that we do to make people feel safe versus ways that we react or things that we do where people do not feel safe about sharing. The team that I'm a part of has largely been together for a decade. Formally 9 years, but a couple people have been here 10 years. And when we talk about the fact that high performing teams do not always get along, nobody is saying that everybody has to say yes or get along. No, the different opinions, the diversity in the team is its strength, but it doesn't have to mean something bad when we disagree. We
Yeah.
can respectfully disagree. We can come out with something even stronger. And so my own team bounces back quite quickly from any sort of conflict. And some folks will say, I said the word folks, that's one of Susan's words.
We've got caught out.
Some people, I'm from the Midwest, it's just one of those things, you know? So I would say
Folks.
people, some people will look at our team's ability to bounce back quite quickly and say, how did you do that? We have a base layer of trust. We have
That's
that
really,
trust.
really interesting, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And so fail doesn't mean bad.
No, absolutely. And yet there are some cultures within organizations where if you make a mistake, you'd think that World War III was starting or the world was ending.
I like to say,
and it gets it out of the...
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, that there's been a slight delay in the yeah.
I like to say FAIL stands for first attempt in learning.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So often we think that a failure is going to be the end of the world. And I wonder if there is something generational where certainly my parents, they're from the silent generation. If you made any little failure, it was a massive drama. And finally, now people are reframing failure into a learning opportunity.
Thankfully, if it's bad news as a leader of a small company, I want to know about it. I want to know about it as soon as possible so that it doesn't linger and so that we can adapt very quickly. So I don't want people to be silent. I love new people because new people will come in and challenge the status quo just by asking curious questions. And I encourage that. I'm like, please don't hold back. Ask whatever you would like because it gives us an opportunity to revisit.
That is so interesting because one of the talks that I give is on being positively disruptive. And I don't know about you, Angela, but certainly in the United Kingdom, we are taught to pass exams and get our qualifications and almost to be good within a framework. And yet when you go to work, one of your superpowers could be that you're a fresh pair of eyes.
Mm-hmm.
question everything.
I agree. And I think certifications are great. Obviously, it would sound hypocritical if I didn't think certifications were awesome since I offer those. But I do point out that those are not the end of the journey. In many ways, those are the beginning of the journey. I liken it in the United States to getting your driver's license. Nobody says you're an expert. They say you know just enough to be allowed onto the street. So we hope you get better by doing it. So somebody can have all the certifications, but we really also want them to have that curious mind, to ask a lot of questions, because the certification gives a base layer of knowledge, but it does not give you the people smarts, does not give you that, situational awareness or reading the room, as you like to say.
So, and you were mentioning to me before we came on that since the pandemic, your organization or the whole certification of the Scrum has become global. What changes have you made as a result of that?
Oh my goodness, so very many. The certifying body, the Scrum Alliance, at least that's the one that I work with, because there are others, but they had a policy prior to the pandemic that our classes had to be held in person. So the only thing that stopped me or any of the other trainers from teaching around the globe was, were you willing to get on a plane? Where did you want to hold classes? Well, the leader of the organization at that time, I remember it because it was March 13th, it was Friday, March 13th, 2020, sent out an email. All of your classes may be taught virtually. What? It's like, what? What just happened? Our own team called a big timeout and got together in our office because people came into the office as lockdown was happening to grab a chair, to grab a monitor, any supplies they might need in their home. And then we got on Zoom that afternoon and just figured it out. Because for us, there was no going back. We had to adapt, we had to pivot, or potentially go out of business. And so the physical things that had to happen, I had to rethink every single exercise, because all of the exercises for the students assumed that they were right next to each other in a room, that they had physical supplies. Well, now I had to flip everything virtually, and I couldn't make assumptions about what somebody might have or not have. As I started teaching, the bigger things that smacked me right in the face were what you and I were talking about. Our words matter. And I told Susan, just for the benefit of your listeners, I have never been so aware of my Americanness as teaching virtually now, where I have people joining from all over the globe. And it always surprises me because I will advertise the time zone. I may say 9 a.m. Central Time in the United States, and I'll get people from Australia joining, I'll get people from the UK, I'll get people from China, and I'll literally say, what time zone you signed up for. Yes, this is just when I could make it work, or they have all these reasons why they wanted to do it. And I have just caught myself making horrible analogies that don't fly with other languages or cultures, giving horrible examples like healthcare. In the US, that's big business. And we have a number of, for-profit healthcare organizations that are using the method that we teach. And so we've got all these examples. Well, the first time I gave a healthcare example and I was addressing a Polish audience, they were all just staring at me like I had three heads. And somebody chatted me and said, we don't understand what you're talking about. We don't pay for healthcare. And I'm like, okay, gotta redo my examples. And the big thing is my slang, is the slang words that I use.
We all have to modify, don't we? And that was a huge learning. That was an opportunity. That was a fail opportunity when you realized about your examples of healthcare. Oh, yes, we've got somebody, Dunja says, yes, as we transition to a global audience, cultural competence becomes increasingly more important. Thank you for that. What a fantastic observation, Dunya. Thank you very much. It does, doesn't it? I mean, certainly we were discussing before we came on about the word folks. I think old folks home in United Kingdom.
I know, and I'm from the upper middle part of the United States, and it's such a word that
Yeah.
we use. And the longer I've stayed home and not traveled, I have found some of these regional slang words sticking, right? Sticking more in my vocabulary, almost like a whisker on a chin, it's just hanging on. Whereas when I traveled more, I was better at not using, regionally specific words and things like that.
It's interesting, isn't it? But the fact that you started doing everything virtually, we're all working more virtually in teams. So do you think this has been a massive opportunity and a gift?
Yes, I personally enjoy seeing my son grow up. It hurts, to have to leave and go on a trip for 2 to 3 days and not be with him. So I think people are enjoying more time with their families. They don't have the commute, the lost time, and those sorts of things. But there are also things then that we need to adapt in the way that we work with each other. And so some people are returning back to in person. We're trying to run a few in-person classes. The thing I'm hearing from people coming to those is, yes, and I still have to know how to do this online. So that's great that I'm coming here, to be in this class, but I think it's a huge opportunity to teach people better online facilitation skills.
Yes.
And how to work through team issues or create psychological safety, even in a virtual environment.
I think that's a really good point, isn't it? Has it made a real difference to your business or the organization who you are licensed from? Have they changed their methodology at all?
They've had to adapt. And one of the things that the leader at the time who made the decision to say, all your classes are now virtual, there was a bunch of, will we go back? Will we go back? That bubbled up to him. And at the time he said, I can't see a world where we're putting the genie back in this bottle. Because he was getting messages from people in countries where no trainer would ever travel to. And people were saying, I can finally get certified. I can get my certified Scrum Master credential. And I would have never had this opportunity unless I was willing to pay money, take time off work if their employer wasn't paying for it or something like that. And now I can have it. So when he thought about the mission of the organization, really changing the world of work, doesn't virtual support that mission more so than, hey, you can only teach in person?
Oh, that's brilliant. Now, if anybody is watching and wants to ask a question, please feel free to. I've had some questions that arrived to me beforehand, but, Angela's here to answer your questions. But I've got a couple more questions. What benefits do you think there are from adopting this this method of team building or creating a team and working?
One of the biggest is breaking down silos or breaking down, information being dark or being hidden. Because so often we'll say, oh, Susan's the only person who can do this. Well, Susan's not here today. Well, then it's just going to have to wait. Well, wait a minute. What if Susan taught her teammates and now we have more than one person who can tackle a problem? And maybe we want more than one person's viewpoint or opinion or thoughts, and we come with a better solution. Doesn't mean everybody has to be an expert in everything. And that's a myth, I think, that is out there about Scrum and Agile is, oh, this team stuff, everybody has to do everything. No, that is not what that means. But if we have everybody contribute, we come away with a stronger product. Yes, and we might come away with people who adopt new skills. But the bigger thing is the transparency, right? And more than one person being aware of what's going on. So fewer of these silos or chances for things to get missed.
Oh, that's brilliant. And, you know, one of the things that you do, obviously, in any teamwork, communication is key, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Could you give 3 tips to share on how you can create a good communication within a team?
One of the very first things that I like to do is tell people how to interpret what you're going to say. Because so much of our communication as human beings is nonverbal. I could be going, Susan, I'm really excited to be here today. And you're going to go, really? Because you look like, somebody just told you it's Christmas morning and there's no Santa Claus. So if I told you, I didn't sleep last night. I was up, 2, 3, 4 a.m. and I just could not get to sleep. So I am excited to be here. I am listening. I'm participating. But if I seem a little groggy, I didn't get any sleep last night. So you're telling people how to interpret what's going on with you so that we don't have any bad assumptions. Because that little ego, that little internal voice just likes to make stuff up.
Oh, absolutely. And it's all about us rather than, as I said earlier, reading the room.
Absolutely. So first tip, tell people how to interpret what you're about to say. The second thing is, I always say wait, WAIT, which stands for why am I talking?
Oh, I love that one. No, you don't need to talk.
Some people just wait to talk. And it's like, okay, if you're really going to wait to talk, think about it. What you are about to say, is it going to move the conversation forward? Is it going to add value? Or do you just want to hear yourself talk? Because if it's not going to add value, it is perfectly okay to create space for everyone else. It's really hard to listen if you're talking. So
Yeah.
That's my second tip. I like the acronym WAIT. And then the third thing is to ask for information. Because if I don't understand the word somebody's using, the courage to say, I may not be understanding what you're saying in the way that you intended. Could you tell me more about that? Could you explain this word? Could you explain that word? Or even the context? Because so often, like you mentioned earlier, people might see it as a failure. Oh, I can't admit that I don't understand what they're saying. They'll think I'm dumb. No, we're really trying to work better together. And we can only do that if we communicate. And communication has to be received, so it has to be understood. So if I don't understand, I will encourage people to say, I don't understand the words you just used. I'm not understanding the context. Could you give me an example?
Brilliant. Now, I've got some questions that have come in. What are some specific strategies you use to build a team with adult learners? I'm transitioning from teaching and I'm great at building class cultures with kids, which is fantastic. But kids are open to sharing, generally open to new experiences and playful. I'm curious about specific ways that we can do that with adults. Fabulous question. Thank you.
Really great question. Kids are naturally curious. They just have this open mind. Adults, we got to work out a little bit. So the first thing is getting them doing anything together. And there are a lot of exercises. The internet's full of them. People like, Patrick Lencioni, Dr. Harvey Robbins have all kinds of exercises, but I'll just give you a super simple one that I use. So we call it a personal histories exercise, and it's a variation of something Patrick Lencioni does. But if you can ask people to share 3 things, and they have to be really low stakes things. And one of the things is, where did you grow up, or where are you from? How many kids are in your family, or where you fall in that birth order? And then an achievement of yours growing up. Is there an accomplishment or an achievement you were particularly proud of growing up? And I always try to point out, we're not talking about your inner child. We're talking about, your childhood. So like sports teams, speech, debate, all those kinds of things. And once you get people being willing to be vulnerable in sharing anything, You've got to keep at it. Now we're starting to build that trust, because trust is just like a bank account. There's got to be deposits into that account, because then when we go to make a withdrawal, there's got to be something there. So when the stakes are higher, say, for example, somebody needs to ask for help, instead of that ego taking over, oh, you can't ask for help, that'll make you look silly. No, I trust these folks. They genuinely care about me. Hey, I could use some help. So you've got to be willing to demonstrate that vulnerability. You have to practice that skill on lower stakes topics, so that when you have higher stakes topics, that trust is there, just like that bank account.
Oh, that's a brilliant answer. Now, in a previous life, I was an opera singer, and all I would say is that, it's a culture where you don't even look behind you to be, that it is pretty ruthless. What would your tips be for dealing with an environment or a team which is very toxic?
Oh my gosh, so many. One of the first things that we ask teams to do when we come in and coach is, do they have an agreement with each other? And some teams do. So some teams are pretty good, right? They'll be like, oh yeah. But okay, well, let's take a look at it, because does everything in the agreement still hold true or not? In the worst cases, teams don't have one. So it's like, oh, well, let's just try some simple guardrails, and it's got to come from them. They have to give the input, because then they're more likely to follow it. So let's have, some guardrails around how we're going to behave with each other, what's acceptable or what's not acceptable. And really simple ones to start with is a decision-making process. Is it just a free-for-all? Do we just browbeat each other till somebody gives in? Or do we have a mechanism where we say 2 out of 3, like we'll vote, best 2 out of 3? Or do we simply say majority rules if we have an odd number on the team? So it can have things like that, but it can also have behavioral things in the agreement. As an example, there was a time when we had a very toxic person on our team. They were voted off the island after a certain point because they weren't willing to change that behavior. They used to use humor, which our whole team does. We all have silly senses of humor, and it was in our agreement. It's okay to use humor, but this person would do it to hurt.
Oh,
They would do it to, but it's okay to use humor. It's right here in our agreement. It's like, that's not what that means.
Oh.
So we had to revise it. So for teams who say, well, Angela, that's not such a great tip because we have an agreement. When's the last time you looked at it? When's the last time you went through it as a team and revised it? Because it should have an expiration date, just like the milk carton. It could go bad if teams aren't actively following it. And so we've got to have some rules of engagement with each other for when those toxic behaviors happen. And sometimes it's more respectful to the offender as to the people who were offended if there is a change. Not always, and it may be extreme to some people listening, but it was far more respectful to that person because they weren't happy either.
Yes. Sometimes that happens, that behavior is happening because they don't feel safe themselves, or that there are other challenges for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I would start with some sort of an agreement. I would, talk as a team about it and say, you get to choose this is your team. What kinds of agreements are acceptable? What kinds of behaviors are not acceptable? And then make sure that we revisit that.
Oh, that's really interesting. Now, you've written a book called the Scrum Master Files, Secrets Every Coach Should Know. Why did you write it?
I will spare you the longer story of how that book came to be, because there were 2 initial failures. Third time's the charm. What happened is I would use my own case studies and failures from when I was a Scrum Master working into being a coach, but I would not name names. I would go to, of course, right? No non-disclosures will be violated. But I even went to the trouble, Susan, to use no pronouns. No she, no he, no just. And so it immerses you into that situation. And as I started using those case studies in my classes, students were like, you have to be talking about my company. This just
Oh,
this just happened yesterday. And I'm like, it's impossible for me to be talking about your company because it's something that happened to me, 10 years ago at a completely different company. So there's something universal about these case studies. And so I decided to put a collection of them together, but to go further with them, to not only say, okay, let's have you work through the case study, but then let me tell you where things went wrong and what to do about actually fixing it. So some of the feedback I have heard from my students just warms my heart. It's like, it's the reason this book came into being. They said, I finally had something tangible, something tactical that taught me what to do. I'm learning, from your experiences, from your
brilliant.
failures.
Brilliant. So if people are either listening to the podcast or they're watching the live stream, how can they get hold of a copy of your book?
Scrumfiles.com. So if they go to scrumfiles.com, there's 2 opportunities for them there. One, they can get a completely free download, 3 easy ways to get started with Scrum and Agile. But my website, scrumfiles.com, allows them to get an autographed copy of the book.
Ooh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's even better. And how can people get in contact with you generally? Is that through the website?
They can through the website, but as we discussed, LinkedIn, everyone's on LinkedIn. Although with a name like Angela Johnson, it's pretty generic. If you put in Angela Johnson Scrum, I pop right up.
Brilliant. Oh, this has been a superb interview and conversation on live stream. Thank you so much, Angela. There are so many things to take away that I'm going to be thinking about in the next few hours. And I hope that everybody else has taken something from this. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you for having me.
And so this is Susan Heaton-Wright from SuperStar Communicator. Thank you very much for watching or listening.